You're listening to iCannabisRadio.com.
Welcome. If you can see me underneath the banner, I'm Georgia, and you are listening to iCannabis Radio on Monday night today's the 10th of September, 2012. Holy cow. I'm in the studio with my favorite producer, Chris.
How's it going, everybody? How's it going?
He said it's going good. There's still a banner over us, but that's okay. I'm sure it'll disappear at some point. That magic will happen. We've got a really fun show tonight, and I'm really excited. This is our Extracts 101 show. You know, for those of you that have been listening to the IDAB show on Wednesday nights, you are taught by the experts. You know all there is to know about extracts, and there's a whole bunch of people who don't.
I can barely hear you. Let's switch mics real quick because I can barely hear you. I sound a lot better on this one. Let me give you this one real quick.
All right, I'm going to switch over. Little magic running. How's that?
Way better.
Oh, much better. Okay. So we're gonna talk extracts. We are gonna talk extracts with Dan from Top Shelf. He's going to be on the phone with us tonight. And then we're going to have your favorite doctor and mine, Alan Shackelford, on to talk about, you know, what's his medical opinion on the pros and cons of extracts and BHO versus CO2. Is there a versus? Is it all kind of the same? What should we know? So that's what's going to happen tonight. Sounds pretty fun. What do you think, Chris? Sound good?
Sound awesome.
He says he doesn't have a mic. But we are going to start with the news. I love the news. Now, please, I know you're used to Warren doing the news. You'll just have to bear with me doing the news. So anyway, we're gonna get started. I want to start with a little personal news. Warren and I got a copy of the new exclusions for our homeowners insurance policy. And, you know, it's talking about all the things that aren't covered if they're lost or damaged or stolen. And one of the things that is not covered is controlled substances. And it says that our policy does not cover a controlled substance included on Schedule 1, as defined by 21 U.S.C.A. Section 812. This exclusion applies whether or not the state allows use of the substance. So it's specifically saying that medical marijuana is not covered under our homeowners policy. I thought that was kind of interesting. And clearly that means to me that people have been claiming a loss, don't you think?
Yes, it has.
So don't call your insurance company and say, dude, someone stole my weed. Because they're going to say,
go yourself.
Too bad, so sad. So that's kind of interesting. In local news, I wanted to show a little video today that came on the 9 o'clock or 9 News, the local NBC affiliate here in Denver at 4 o'clock. The title is Study Indoor Pot Operations Filled with Toxic Air. So listen to this.
The Alps meet the Rockies at Breckenridge's annual Oktoberfest.
That's okay. A little free ad for Oktoberfest. We can be down with that. We tried to get away without, but we'll just talk through it. That'll be great. We'll just talk right through Oktoberfest. There we go. And here we are.
Homes to dismantle marijuana grow operations.
And a new study reveals that the air is toxic and it's harmful, especially for the officers who are in these environments for long periods of time.
Can you hear it, Georgia?
Nope.
No, I can't hear it either.
If you're going to go in and you're going to spend
Sorry about that, folks. We might have to.
I can't hear you either.
45 minutes just looking.
There we go.
Stuff in the house, then you might want to consider having a disposable respirator. If you're going to go in and you're going to
Sorry about that. We're going to redo that for you guys.
There's a growing concern about the safety of police officers who go into homes to dismantle marijuana grow operations.
And a new study reveals that the air is toxic and it's harmful, especially for the officers who are in these environments for long periods of time.
If you're going to go in and you're going to spend an hour or two, half an hour, 45 minutes just looking, cataloging stuff in the house, then you might want to consider having a disposable respirator. If you're going to go in and you're going to pull out all these plants and rip them out. Then we jump up to a full-face respirator.
It is believed that the air in a grow operation has mold spores, pesticides, and carbon monoxide. So coming up at 5 o'clock, we'll tell you about the risk
They're
of
on your
children
own plants at
who
home, too.
sometimes live in these grow operations.
Right, exactly. So it sounds like we're both really, really loud right now. Sorry, you guys. My favorite was the end of that, though, where the next segment at 5 o'clock was going to be, and what to do with the children who live in these pot grow operations. I don't know any children that actually live in a pot grow operation, as they're calling it. I don't think parents have their kids living amongst the baby girl plants. But what do I know? I didn't watch the 5 o'clock episode. So if you watch the 5 o'clock segment and you know what happens to these little garden children, feel free to pass it on to the rest of us. It's just interesting. Toxic, okay. Pesticides, okay. But no detail. And so all they do is freak people out and make them nervous and give them reason to believe that that people are doing something similar to, I don't know, making methamphetamines in their homes, where people have to go in and you can't resell the house because it's so toxic. I mean, come on, folks.
It grows from dirt, people. It grows from dirt. There's
Right.
no chemical lab set up in there.
Right. Pesticides, bad. But if you notice, I mean, if I'm right, those plants were all in flower. If anyone's putting pesticides on plants in flower, there's a whole bunch of things that are going wrong in that operation.
They shouldn't be growing.
Yeah, they
Ask for some help.
they definitely. And actually, it might be a good thing for them to listen to this show in a couple of weeks, when we'll have a grow segments, and they can ask their questions about what to do if they have mold. Mold, not powdery mildew, mold. Anyhow, very interesting.
Don't you get that if, like, you get a flood and they don't clean it right? Don't you get mold?
Yeah, I don't know a lot of
yeah,
places that have mold, but then I mean, I've never been in a place that's even been dirty. So what do I know?
I have, and I've seen people living in there, and I will.
Did you see children living in the grow operation?
No.
Children of the pot grow.
Oh no, I didn't see no children's in the pot
Okay.
grow. I'm just saying I've seen some houses where it's been disgustingly gross in there, and I don't know how they live there.
Oh, well, I get that too. Yeah, I understand that.
But we don't hear anything about that.
Right. That's right.
Other than hoarders on TV.
Love that show.
Good show.
Love/hate that show. Actually, my favorite show on TV, Doomsday Preppers. That's my favorite show. But we'll talk about that another day. Actually, we're going to talk about that kind of at the end of the news. Again, in local news, the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol filed a lawsuit over the council's deletion of the voter guide text. So, long and the short of it, there was a vote in the last edit of the Blue Book, which is sent out to all of the voters, that explains the pros and cons of all of the issues. And in order to get something deleted, there needs to be what's called a supermajority, which means 2/3 of the council needs to vote on, it needs to agree to having something deleted. And it looks like there was a little error, and Senator Mark Scheffel made a motion to amend the first of 3 paragraphs in the arguments for section of the Blue Book for the yes on, for 64. And it was approved unanimously by the council. A short time later, members realized that the motion had deleted the last 3 sentences of the 5-sentence paragraph, whereas they thought it would only remove a few words from the first 2 sentences. To rectify the mistake, Representative Mark Fernando made a motion to reinstate those 3 sentences, and it was seconded by Lois Court. The council voted 8-5 in support of the motion. However, it failed because it needed to receive the 2/3 votes required to modify that draft, and as a result, the key arguments in the support of Amendment 64, which would regulate marijuana like alcohol, were deleted without the 2/3 support. And so this is supposed to be an fair and unbiased view of each and every issue on the ballot, and this is clearly not fair and not balanced. So there was a hearing this afternoon to stop the printing of the Blue Book until this issue can be rectified. I have a call out to Mason Tvert, the co-chairman of the Yes on 64 campaign, to find out exactly what happened at the hearing today. Hopefully the information will be reinstated so that voters can actually have the information that they need to be able to determine whether or not they want to vote yes or no based on the information, as opposed to what Senator Mark Scheffel wants people to know. Pisses me off, I have to say. It really does. Whether you are a yes on 64 person or not, you should be.
The Alps meet the Rockies at Breckenridge's Oktoberfest.
It's Oktoberfest again. You should want people to have the information that they need to make an educated vote and decision on issues, and to vote in an educated manner. And lots of people, in all honesty, get the bulk of their information from the Blue Book. Lots of people don't even necessarily know about all of the issues until they see that Blue Book, and so they rely on it heavily. And because Mark Scheffel is anti-marijuana legalization, he took it upon himself to, as far as I'm concerned, be shady. And that's not the person that we want in office. I don't care which side you believe in. You definitely don't want someone shady in office.
No, you do not.
No, you do not at all. So as soon as we get some more information, we will pass it on to you. In other news items, on a happier note, yes. Richard A. Posner, a widely respected federal judge, called for the elimination of criminal laws against marijuana in a September 6th lecture at Elmhurst College in Illinois. Judge Posner, a member of the influential I can't speak, United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit in Chicago, is what they call an intellectual giant. And as he was introduced for this speech, he was called a genius. And he said, and of course he is a genius because his call for legalization is significant because he's considered a legal conservative. And I quote, "I don't think we should have a fraction of drug laws that we have. I think that it's really absurd to be criminalizing possession or use or distribution of marijuana," Posner said. "I can't see any difference between that and cigarettes." And the audience gave him a round of applause. He also stated, "I'm skeptical about other drug laws. The notion of using the criminal laws as primary means of dealing with the problem of addiction, of misuse, of ingesting dangerous drugs, I don't think that's sensible at all." He said the drug laws are, quote, "responsible for a high percentage of our prisoners, and that these punishments are often very, very severe, and it's all very expensive." Judge Posner has pointed out that legalizing marijuana and other drugs would save federal, state, and local governments $41.3 billion per year. Don't know where he came up with that figure, but I'll repeat it endlessly. He said drug laws are, quote, "a waste of a lot of high-quality legal minds, and it's also a waste of people's lives who could be at least moderately productive and without having to spend year after year in prison. This is a serious problem." You can see his entire speech on YouTube, because you can see everything on YouTube.
I love YouTube.
I love YouTube. I love YouTube.
It's where I look for my news.
It's where I watch TV when I missed it. A little humorous news, although funny in a way that makes me want to hurt myself. Paul Ryan, you guys are all familiar with Mitt Romney's running mate, Paul. I can't tell the truth about anything, Ryan. He has taken 3 different positions on medical marijuana. Not over the course of the last month or so, but in the course of one weekend. When interviewed, he said that in Colorado, he was asked the question, "In Colorado, we have medical marijuana under a Romney-Ryan ticket. What happens?" Ryan responds, "It's up to Coloradans to decide." To which we would all say, "Woohoo!" Because it should be up to Coloradans to decide. And guess what? We already have.
That's why we're the United States of America.
Heck to the yeah. So it says, "So even if federal law says marijuana is illegal, you're saying," and Ryan responds, "My personal position on this issue has been to let the states decide what to do with these things. This is something that is not a high priority of ours as to whether or not we go down the road on this issue. What I've always believed is the states should decide." He goes on to say, "I don't personally agree with it, but this is something Coloradans have to decide for themselves." So wonderful. Since nearly 3/4 of Americans agree with this position, but he's running with Mitt Romney, who says that he will fight marijuana legalization tooth and nail. And and when asked in Colorado, Mitt Romney was pretty argumentative about his particular stance on marijuana. When Ryan was asked, our spokesperson kind of explained Ryan's position and went on to say that he agrees with Mitt Romney that marijuana should never be legalized. In other words, Ryan woke up and realized that crap, he needs to know what his running mate's position on issues are, and he ought to align himself that way. So the other thing that I think is kind of interesting with our friend Paul Ryan, and if you think that I'm telling you not to vote for Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan, it's not my position to tell you what to do or what not to do, but it is my position to give you information. And because it's my show, I can also give my opinion. And my opinion is that you are completely uneducated if you're going to think that our country is going to be any better under a Romney-Ryan ticket. And part of this isn't about the fact that I'm not a Republican. Part of this is about the fact that I don't have faith in these gentlemen. I think that Mitt Romney makes decisions based on his religious beliefs, and whether or not you're a religious person doesn't make a difference. What we have decided that this country was based on the separation of church and state, and if you can't make a decision that's based on what you think makes the most sense for people as opposed to what your God tells you to do, you should not be in office.
Yep.
In addition, Paul Ryan, I really struggle with him because he has bold-faced lied. And I don't know how in this day and age people can tell a bold-faced lie, and think that they're going to get away with it. And the two things most recently that have bothered me that he's lied about is he claimed that he climbed something like 20 14ers in Colorado. He didn't summit any in a trip to Colorado.
So he just claimed.
Yeah. And this is stuff that's pretty easy to check. And then he claims that he ran a sub 3-hour marathon, and that he didn't exactly know his time, but it was somewhere around 2 hours and 50 minutes. Well, let me just tell you that every person who's ever run a marathon knows their freaking time, and when it was determined, like easy investigation, find out what Paul Ryan ran his marathon in, it was 4 hours and 1 minute. Nothing's wrong with that. The dude finished a marathon, 26.2 miles, high freaking five.
Yeah, just tell the truth.
Don't lie about it.
Especially when people can find out the truth.
Right. Don't lie.
The truth shall set you free.
Right. Don't lie, Mr. Ryan. If you want us to take you seriously at all and actually maybe listen to your position on things, we get really caught up if we can't trust you on just the basic things. Then we certainly can't trust you with putting our economy in your hands, the safety of our troops in your hands. We just can't do it. On that note, I know that we need to take a commercial break. Yeah. And really, I hate to go right into our friends at Medical Marijuana of the Rockies after dissing on Paul Ryan, but I know that Aaron and Jerry would applaud me. Please, when you are heading up to the mountains, stop at Medical Marijuana of the Rockies in Frisco, exit 204 off of I-70, right behind the Big O Tires. They're your mountain source for meds. www.mmrockies.com, where they have their ever-changing strain selection, as well as they have a fantastic selection of immature plants, also known as clones, and you can see their clone selection on the website as well. Please tell them that you heard about them on iCannabis Radio. That's Medical Marijuana of the Rockies, mmrockies.com. We'll be right back.
The law offices of Edson, Maton, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it on grass. Runongrass.com. Let's face it, rules and regulations are complicated, especially in the field of medical marijuana. Let Medical Marijuana 101 help you get through the compliance process. We can also explain to you your employment requirements, your employees, and your business. But our work doesn't stop there. Our experience in cultivation ranges from the design of grow rooms to the diagnosis and resolution of grow problems. Visit us at www.medicalmarijuana101.com or call 303-388-7706. That's 303-388-7706.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
Talk it up, Colorado. Just a really quick update. So I got a text from Mason Tavert, and the hearing for the Blue Book halt of printing has been continued until Wednesday. So Wednesday night we'll give you some information on that. We are going to call our friend Dan of IDAB Radio, who is also the owner of, you've heard of Top Shelf Extracts. They are the Denver High Times Cannabis Cup winners, and, just all around super expert, wonderful guys. Hi, Dan. This is Georgia, and you're live on iCannabis Radio.
Hey, Georgia. How you doing?
I'm super. How are you?
I'm great.
So I'm feeling a little hot and bothered after my thing about Paul Ryan. So I have to. I said I'm feeling a little hot and bothered after I just went off on Paul Ryan and how he's a big liar.
He is.
He is a big liar.
Yeah, I don't trust him a second. I mean, why is he going for the stoner vote all of a sudden?
It's kind of bothersome to me. But anyhow, we're ready to turn our show to something far more interesting and exciting than blowhard politicians.
I was going to say one thing about that, though. Did you see what Tom Morello said about him? Because supposedly Rage Against the Machine is his favorite band.
Really?
Yeah. Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine basically said, Ryan might like him, but, they're not fans of Ryan.
Nice. Well, there's been this whole, lots of bands recently have come out with saying, please stop using our music. REM most recently just said, you got to stop using our music without our permission. So thanks to our friends at Rage. Okay, so the purpose of this show today really is a couplefold, but mainly, Wednesday night is where all the experts and cool kids get together to talk dabs, and you guys all speak your language, and you know what it is that your secret handshake gets you to understand. But for the rest of us, we need a 101 class. We need kind of the basics. When I hear about butter versus shatter versus wax versus Earl versus oil versus honey, I don't know what any of that really means. And to me, when I look at it, I don't know what I'm looking for. And so, because of your expertise, because Top Shelf is one of the most well-respected extracts purveyors in all of the world, but certainly Colorado, it makes the most sense for me to ask you to kind of help me and our listeners just understand the basics of what we're talking about. First of all, when we're talking about any sort of concentrate. So I think when people think of hash, they think of, little children in Africa running through cannabis plants, getting resin all over them, and then taking, a knife and scraping it off their arms, and people smoking that, right? Because that's how it started.
Yeah, it's just the extracted resin glands from the plant that are left over. Usually, when you grow a plant, there are buds, and they're always surrounded by a lot of leaves. And you don't necessarily want to smoke the leaves. You just want to smoke the fresh buds, like the fruit of the plant. All those extra leaves, though, still have, I guess you call it medicine on it, left over. So what I do and what many other people do is extract what's left over on those leaves, getting rid of the plant material and saving the THC, CBD, other cannabinoids.
And so, what is the basic process? I know it's kind of a complicated process, and there are some trade secrets. But what's the basic premise of being able to extract that from the plant material?
The basic premise is you make it the plant material really, really cold, and through some sort of agitation, whether it's chemical or otherwise, or just ice water, agitating the ice water, break off those trichromes, which is where all the medicinal properties of the marijuana are contained. And so
when you do that, you can make several different kinds of extracts. Like I was talking about before, there's wax, and there's an oil, and there's butter, and
yeah, there's several different genres. I focus on using butane as my solvent to extract and produce hash. Essentially, the reason I use butane is because it's already used in a lot of commercial products. It's used in cooking sprays. It's used in hairspray as a commercial propellant, and it's also used commercially to extract flavors and smells, like the aromatics from any number of plants. So that's why it's uniquely suited to extract from marijuana.
So, and we're going to talk to Alan Shackelford in a little bit about his medical opinion on the pros and cons. But there have been lots of discussions about using butane versus using CO2, for example. And you're clearly, as you mentioned, I mean that's your agent of choice. What do you say to people when they ask, is it dangerous or unhealthy?
What I say is no, it's absolutely not. As long as you do it right, because what you want to do is get rid of all the solvent you use, to get rid of all of it from your final product. Because if you don't, then it's dangerous. Then it's unhealthy. But to what degree, we don't even know yet.
Right.
Because I was on a panel with Dr. Alan Shackelford actually at the High Times Cannabis Cup,
right.
And one of the things he said was that inhaling small amounts of hydrocarbons, which butane is a hydrocarbon, there's no known health risk from that because it's an inert gas. But obviously, repeated exposure to anything at high levels will be bad for you.
So why a concentrate versus a bud, or is it an either or situation?
It's more controllable. First of all, when you get bud, you don't know exactly how strong it's going to be. I mean, it can range from like 10% THC to like 25% THC. When you get a concentrate, it generally starts at about 50% THC and goes all the way up into the mid-90s. So when you take a small dab of it, what people call like one hit size, basically. When you take one of those, you know exactly what you're going to get every time.
Absolutely.
Also, you inhale much less smoke from the plant matter, and let's face it, it's stronger. So if you need some kind of strong medicine, then it works great.
Do you have an opinion on what to tell people who haven't smoked concentrates before? They've only smoked flowers, and if they are interested
Trust yourself. That's what I say. Trust yourself. Trust your senses. Because if you look at it and you see that it's dark and looks nasty, or there's bubbles in it, it's probably bad. If it smells offensive to you, it's going to taste offensive to you.
That's right.
And that's probably because there's something residually left in it that's not good for you. So it's bad. I mean, and if you touch it and it's too sticky, usually there's a problem with it too.
Would shatter have bubbles in it too?
It does occasionally. The way we make it, we try not to get it too hot, so we vac it for a long time in a vacuum oven, basically, so that we stay within a certain temperature range. And when we're done with it, quite often there's craters left behind because as the gas, as it off gases, it'll leave those behind as the bubbles raise and pop, but the material is not hot enough to go back into just like a flat form,
So Chris just mentioned shatter, and as I said earlier, I think one of the things that's confusing to folks is that there are all of these names for things. Thank you.
Earwax is like the first term and the general term used to describe the waxy form that it comes in. It'll look like toothpaste, or it'll look like I don't know, Play-Doh. Have that kind of consistency. Peanut butter is what another euphemism people call it. It'll end up looking like that, and that is the term now everybody uses to describe wax. Now, one particular subsection of wax is butter, and when it's called butter, it's, you can touch it, it's stable, it's crumbly. Still, though, some people in the scene have a problem with the butter. So, shatter is just the same thing, but it's finished a different way. Instead of being agitated and mixed when it's being made, it's actually just left alone in a Pyrex pan and purged out in a vacuum to the point that it's just absolutely clear, glass-like. At which point you scrape it and put it on parchment paper usually, because it won't stick to parchment paper, and prepare it for packaging from there.
And all of those are smoked through a vaporizer is the best way to do that, or?
There's a number of ways to do it, but the way it's kind of just came about organically and naturally is using either a titanium pad or a titanium nail or a quartz nail. So people will have pieces where, let's say, a dome. Going to a regular water pipe attachment, it would have like another nail stem where the nail would rest. You'd heat up the nail, you'd put the dome on, and you already have a dab, one hit loaded on a dabber, paper clip, dental pick, some kind of utensil, whereupon you put it on the hot nail and inhale from there. So that's generally the best way to do it, off of titanium or quartz. And that's how most people do it that way, because you get a better flavor, and you really preserve it. You really get the most out of the concentrate you're investing in, because let's face it, it costs a little more than just flowers.
Yeah, what's interesting is I read something today, and I had you read something as well, and so what I might be saying is wrong, and you'll have to clarify. But what I read was that butane hash is more expensive, and more expensive to make than CO2. But CO2 extracted tends to be more expensive in the store because of the methodology and the machine it takes to make it. Is that your experience as well?
With butane, there's like the steady cost of solvent. And there are recycling machines you could use to cut down on that, but I don't personally feel I can make as high quality of a product using a recirculating machine, a recycling machine. I feel like I have to do it in an open system. And CO2, you make the initial investment, which is like $50,000 to $250,000 in your extractor, and then there's not much solvent cost,
right.
Except if you're using one of the machines that uses a secondary solvent, because sometimes you have to use one of those to get it out of whatever receptacle it goes into, like alcohol or something. I'm not super familiar with the CO2 process, but I know that to date, the end process just isn't as good. It's usually around like 40 to 50% THC, or active cannabinoids, and the flavor's not there, and that's really important to me. I almost feel like the terpenes, which is what gives you flavor from plant material, I feel like without those, you're just really missing something from the medicinal experience.
So you would get more flavor out of shatter than you would out of earwax or a butter, right?
It depends. It really depends, because sometimes, actually I should say some people feel that it degrades much quicker than shatter does, but it really should have the same flavor, because it's almost all the same process except for the whipping.
Excellent. So if people really want to find out more about extracts, they really ought to listen to IDAB on Wednesday nights, correct? Definitely. And your product...
Because if we don't know the answer, there'll be someone in the chat room with quite a few of them. It's not just us, but we try to make IDAB all about the concentrate community, because one has sprung up around it. And, if we don't know the answer, someone who's listening in the room will.
I've obviously listened to your show and have learned quite a bit. And I think one of the things that's so interesting is that you call it the community, and it really is. I mean, people really are strong believers in that form of medication and medicating, and people really do want to find the healthiest, best way to relieve their symptoms. And I think your show does a great job of being able to help people learn about that.
Yeah, we just try to be honest and real because we're still in the process of learning ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you, Dan, and thank you especially for doing this kind of at the last minute. You are wonderful, and I knew that I would learn a lot from you.
No problem. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. We were talking to Dan from Top Shelf Extracts and also the host of iDab Radio on Wednesday nights. You're listening to iCannabis Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we're thanking our sponsors, including Nodo Urban Garden Supply, which is located at 1330 27th Street in downtown Denver, between Walnut and Larimer on 27th. They have all of your growing needs, whether you are a hobby cultivationist or a commercial gardener. Please go to Nodo Urban Garden Supply or visit them online at NODO Urban Garden Supply for all of their products that they carry, as well as any information you might need. Questions that you have about your small grow or your large grow, your tomatoes or anything else, our friend Levi will be happy to help you out. Go visit them again at 1330 27th Street in Denver. That's Nodo Urban Garden Supply, and we'll be right back.
Let's face it, rules and regulations are complicated, especially in the field of medical marijuana. Let Medical Marijuana 101 help you get through the compliance process. We can also explain to you your employment requirements, your employees, and your business. But our work doesn't stop there. Our experience in cultivation ranges from the design of grow rooms to the diagnosis and resolution of grow problems. Visit us at www.medicalmarijuana101.com or call 303-388-7706. That's 303-388-7706.
The law offices of Edson, Mayton, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it. On grass. Runongrass.com.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
Welcome back. You're listening to iCannabis Radio, and one of our regular guests on all of the shows on our station is Dr. Alan Shackelford. Do you know why that is? Chris, do you know why we always have Alan on?
Because he's awesome.
Because he's awesome. Because he's smart as hell. Because he's logical. Because he's fun and funny and charming and intelligent. So welcome, Alan.
Where is he? I don't recognize that person in this room. Oh, welcome. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. His mic is a little funky. Do you notice that?
Yeah. Yeah, you want to
just talk a
there
little.
You go.
Right, how's that?
That's much
better. That better?
That's much better.
Real quick.
So
just have to ask the engineer.
That's right.
We're all set now.
So Alan, you heard our friend Dan at Top Shelf Extracts talk about BHO and you guys were on a panel together and talking about the pros and the cons. and I want to talk about that in just a second, but I want to start with how and why did you get involved in medical cannabis?
Well, the how is kind of revealing, I guess, of what medicine is all about, which is caring for patients. I was working in occupational medicine in 2009, and a colleague was getting requests from his patients who were no longer being or seeing the benefits from a lot of prescription medications that they had previously had from those medicines. And because cannabis was in the news and people were talking about it, they were looking for alternatives to the things that were no longer working as well as they had. And they were asking him to evaluate them or do medical cannabis evaluations and recommendations if appropriate. And I began to hear it from my patients as well, and he asked me to assist him in evaluating patients who were voicing those requests and that interest. To be quite honest, I was skeptical. I had voted for Amendment 20 because I had known that it could be helpful for nausea and chemotherapy and probably pain and a couple of other things, but there wasn't a lot of data about it. And that was the situation in 2009 when he was making those, or asked me to help out, his increasing patient load in this arena. So I began to look at the medical literature and was astounded at how much research had been done and how much was known. Just it wasn't available, wasn't readily available. So as the more I read, the more I guess interested I became. I wasn't convinced certainly at that point because it's medical data, it's literature, it's not direct hands-on patient care experience, but. I began to make a few recommendations and observe the effects that people were having from using cannabis, either along with prescription medicines or in some instances instead of them. And the effect was so profound in so many instances that it became quite clear that marijuana was a legitimate treatment option for a great many people. Not necessarily the best treatment for everybody. That's never true for any particular treatment. But it was astonishing how many people were able to stop taking narcotic pain medicines, for example, and use cannabis, which is a great deal safer. And just the medical literature was convincing, and the patient experience I guess, completely captivating.
And I would expect nothing less than that answer from you. I mean, doing the research, really figuring it out and really deciding, that made sense for you. Everyone knows kind of my story, but, Dr. Shackelford's my doc, and we knew each other socially before I ever saw you professionally, and it's been a couple of years that you've been seeing me, and just want you to know that I'm going to run my first full marathon, pain-free, thanks to cannabis, and it's been miraculous for me.
Indeed, and as delighted as I am that's been your experience, and I am absolutely delighted. You are not unique.
Right.
In this arena. You are absolutely unique in so many other ways, but not in this particular arena.
That's right.
And but I have to say that your experience is one that I do cite when I'm asked about those what benefits people see, without naming you, of course. It's simply I have a patient who, and I'm very careful with confidentiality, as we all must be. In medicine, but it's astonishing to me to see how people can go from a state of relative, and for some people it's profound, and for others not quite so profound, inactivity or inability to do things that matter to them, either professionally or personally, and be able to either go back to them or, in some instances, take up new things that they were unable to do previously. And this is across the board. I see patients with spinal cord injuries who are wheelchair bound and dependent on narcotics be able now to shed the narcotic medicines and be much more physically active, some of them participating in wheelchair sport events. It's really remarkable.
It is
now,
remarkable.
As I always say and maintain, it isn't necessarily the best or the only treatment for a given individual, but it's something that we as medical practitioners should consider.
That's right.
And in fact, what's very interesting, and I don't get a chance to cite this very often, but a group of researchers, American researchers, interestingly, looking at Lou Gehrig's disease, which is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's a degenerative neurological disease. No treatment is available for it, but there is anecdotal evidence that people who use cannabis live longer than people who don't, and the average is that death ensues within 3 to 5 years of diagnosis. Typically, in people using marijuana have survived for as long as 15 years. There's something to this, and this researcher group said that where it is legal to do so, marijuana should be considered as a part of the treatment regimen for anyone with Lou Gehrig's disease, and I think that's telling.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome.
Absolutely.
It's, as I say, not necessarily the only treatment or necessarily the best treatment, but it is certainly something we should consider.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about, as part of that treatment, the use of concentrates and your feeling about again the butane extracted versus the CO2 extracted and the whys and the hows in your medical opinion.
Okay.
So we will be right back after these messages.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
Let's face it, rules and regulations are complicated, especially in the field of medical marijuana. Let Medical Marijuana 101 help you get through the compliance process. We can also explain to you your employment requirements, your employees, and your business. But our work doesn't stop there. Our experience in cultivation ranges from the design of grow rooms to the diagnosis and resolution of grow problems. Visit us at www.medicalmarijuana101.com or call 303-388-7706. That's 303-388-7706.
The law offices of Edson, Mayton, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it. On grass. Runongrass.com.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say,
talk it up, Colorado. Welcome back. You're listening to iCannabis Radio, and we are talking it up, Colorado, with Dr. iCannabis Radio, and we're talking it up with Dr. Alan Shackelford, one of our favorite people, and of course, a regular on Tuesday night show, American Weed Realm Radio with the Stanley Brothers. So we wanted to talk a little bit about, not a little bit, we wanted to talk a lot about the extraction debate that goes on. And the argument that we often hear is butane extractions are bad for you by virtue of the fact that butane is used. Your opinion, your medical opinion is?
Well, I looked into this, and I actually wasn't sure before investigating what actually is known. There's no question that hydrocarbons can be problematic at given concentrations. That is when they're not dilute. But I found, and one of the places to go for information on industrial products, solvents, all sorts of things is something called a materials data safety sheet.
Okay.
And they exist for everything. I mean, anything that's manufactured has to be subjected to testing, and then people need to know what dangers or lack thereof this particular product may pose. The materials data safety sheet on butane is surprising because concentrated, put into a bag, for example, huffing, that sort of thing, I think that's what that's called, is dangerous, no question. But at low concentrations, it's not dangerous. If it's inhaled, it's exhaled rapidly because of the partial pressure. That is, how at what temperature does this stuff vaporize is quite low for solvents and organics like butane. So there appears, and from the material safety data sheet, it seems to substantiate this, there is no danger to low levels of butane or most other hydrocarbons. Now, that's not to say that hydrocarbons in general are safe. That's not true, because some are in fact toxic, but butane happens not to be, according to everything I read. Residual butane in concentrates probably does not pose a risk unless there's enough there to actually be flammable, which would be the major danger. Now, having said all of that, butane itself can be dangerous if the air-butane mix is at the right ratio to be explosive, and butane is flammable. So, you know, there was a report, I think, a couple of years ago of someone in northern Colorado, I think, who blew up his house.
There's always those reports. Please don't make it inside, folks. I mean, come on now.
Ventilation.
Yes, I mean, you really, and in fact, you know, as we determined in the Department of Revenue Advisory Work Group, if you're going to make a hydrocarbon extraction, you must do it on a commercial level using all appropriate safety methods, which also include extraction hoods and recycling or concentrates, something that takes the butane out of the air extracted from the product and then recondenses it back into some sort of liquid. Now that has to happen under pressure, of course, because the temperature of evaporation of this is quite low, as I said. There are other dangers. Now the dangers proposed by doing extractions in plastic are significant because stuff dissolves in hydrocarbons. And that's one reason you use it. Oil-soluble anything will dissolve in a hydrocarbon, and that includes most of the cannabinoids from marijuana itself, but also plastic. So you definitely do not want to use anything but either surgical steel or some inert material like glass if you're going to make any sort of hydrocarbon extracts. CO2 is another obvious extraction method that's been discussed, and I don't know that anybody really knows the difference between extractions made with CO2 or hydrocarbons, butane in this particular case, and there are others that are used. Alcohol, of course, is another extraction method. And I'm not aware of any analytical data that compare using, say, the exact same botanical source, extracted using butane and then CO2 and then alcohol or any other extraction method. So the big question really is whether or not there are any substantial differences in the concentrations of the various cannabinoids using one method over another. If we look at clinical effect, there are certainly differences, I would imagine, but those have never been, to my knowledge, quantified. No one has ever sat down and compared for a given medical condition. This is more effective. This extraction method is more effective than that extraction method. So, as with so many, probably most things cannabis related, we are absolutely at the very beginnings, not even onto the threshold yet of really understanding this. Now the University of Mississippi may have more data on this that I'm not aware of, and I think it would be interesting to speak with Dr. El Soli and find out if there are any data that he's aware of that would differentiate these different products, if you will. But I'm not aware of any myself, and it would be fascinating to be able to do that research, and maybe we'll end up doing it somewhere like Canada or Israel or someplace.
Or Colorado?
Yeah.
Possibly Colorado.
That'd be awesome.
So do your patients ask you questions about concentrates as opposed to flowers? I mean, do they get into that level of detail with you in terms of dosages and those kinds of things?
Typically not. No.
Okay.
And I think, you see, that I'm not sure myself from any clinical data that I'm aware of, be it observational or an actual study, where concentrates have really been investigated.
Yeah.
Now, the question, and this is always a question in cannabis, you know, Dr. Meshalam has said, and he's correct, that cannabis has a biphasic effect. What he means by that is that lower doses you get certain effects, and at higher doses you get other effects. What are we looking for? I am becoming increasingly, I won't say convinced, but certainly the data are beginning to indicate to me that for many different medical problems, low doses, lower concentrations are more effective than higher concentrations. I can't substantiate that except to say that sometimes when people decrease the amounts of cannabis in whatever form they're using, they get better results for their clinical conditions. And I've seen that happen with nausea, in a condition called cyclic vomiting syndrome. It seems that less is more, and I think that may be true for a lot of different conditions, but I don't know because we've never really looked at it in any organized way to see whether or not higher concentrations, like the hash oils and the other things, really have a substantially different clinical effect or effect on a given disease state. Now, there's a lot of talk about Phoenix tears, quote unquote, or those types of concentrates, which are even more highly concentrated, as I understand it, than the typical CO2 or butane extraction. And there are anecdotal data that say that that level of concentrate can be effectively used to treat certain cancers. I don't know if that's true. The anecdotal data are extremely interesting. I'd love to know more about it. And as I've said on a number of different occasions, we knew, or it was known in 1975, that cannabidiol, CBD, and THC together could reduce the size of tumors and kill certain cancer cells, and that has been shown in subsequent animal and mostly cell culture experiments. Does that really translate into human experience? I don't know. And also that question of whether or not a butane extracted oil would be more effective than whatever the method is for making these more highly concentrated extractions. I don't know. I don't think anybody does. And I think that would be something that's something we ought to be looking at.
That's right.
And a lot of clinical experience. What do patients report? Most people that I see are not using highly concentrated extracts.
Well, and from a retail perspective, I mean, people come in and they are looking for concentrates. I mean, that's what's flying out the door. I mean, certainly flowers do too, but people are definitely looking for concentrates. So, did you hear the news today about marijuana use tied to testicular cancer in young men?
No, I actually was in the office today, so I have not seen any of those new things.
So this is great. Smoking pot may boost cancer risk, researchers say. Ready for this?
Who? Let's find out which researchers. That's the important thing, and what studies they did. And
right. This is phenomenal. Look at all the detail in this. This is just there's detail upon detail. The study of 455 Californian men is what the article says. Found that those who had smoked pot were twice as likely to have been diagnosed with testicular germ cell tumors than the most common form of testicular cancer in men younger than age 35. They were trying to figure out why there was this rise in cancer, and so they interviewed recreational drug use among 165 men diagnosed with testicular cancer and 292 healthy men of the same age, and found that those who smoked marijuana had double the risk of testicular tumors compared with men who passed on grass. That's their funny quote. On top of that, their tumors tended to be faster growing and tougher to treat. They go on to say that they're not really sure exactly how and why this happens, but they're claiming that you can't say that marijuana is safe.
So did they exclude any other substances? These people used only marijuana. Did they drink alcohol at all? Did they?
Yes, to all of those.
They did.
To all of those.
I'd like to look at those data.
Yeah, I'll pass this on to you. It's really a very useless study, in my opinion. But, one of those, again, I mean, if we can do anything that we can to refute the fact that this plant can do a great job that maybe expensive pharmaceuticals can't, or maybe even that they can, but this is a healthy, natural way to reduce cancer, then that's yours to take home. I always give our guests a gift.
I do appreciate that.
Sure.
Well, one of these, it's sort of like the studies that purport to show that marijuana use causes schizophrenia. There are no real causal relationships, to my knowledge, between cannabis use and the development of any particular mental illness. I think there may be, what they're seeing is associations. And as I've said before, people with mental disorders, even before they're clinically apparent, they know there's something wrong and they try to fix it with anything and everything.
That's right.
And that includes marijuana, tobacco, alcohol, heroin, I don't know, dandelions.
Right.
Who knows?
Right.
I mean, I think people try to...
They taste awesome.
Dandelions? Okay.
You can make tea out of them.
I've heard that.
Yes.
In salad, too, right?
Yeah, I think they taste disgusting.
Yeah, I've never eaten them. I was just joking.
I'm not averse to trying, new salad ingredients. I'm not sure if I knew
tried
it was
a rose
dandelions, I'd want
petal.
it. Those edible flowers can be very interesting.
You can eat pansies, too.
Really?
Yeah.
Out of the garden?
Yeah.
Wow.
Or if you go to MMD, I have them planted in front of the store, so you can just go and pick some flowers. I wouldn't recommend that you eat them, but you can.
Well, as always, I think you got to kind of consider where they're grown and under what methods, right?
Good points. Yes. There's no pesticides on my pansies.
Right. Exactly. So I think there are all manner of different ways of manipulating data to make something come out.
That's right.
And that's why we have statisticians. As you know, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics.
Right.
And I sat in on research meetings where there were no data. All that was there really was a topic, and the statisticians were already talking about whether we wanted this outcome or that outcome.
Right.
And I think this is problematic. I'd like to see some really straight science on some of this. Just either a chi-square or a very simple statistical analysis, this or that.
Yeah.
I'd like to know what their statistical analysis was, and you see, you can manipulate the data, and as was done once. I didn't do this, but some people at Harvard, where we were looking at obesity, maintenance of weight loss, and whatever other particular traits in these particular patients may have contributed to that. And we saw absolutely nothing until we began to do reverse Bonferroni sorts of analyses, which essentially goes back into the data and compares the data to themselves, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And they found that the more depressed a man was, the better he maintained his weight loss. That's not true.
Yeah, I was going to say that's illogical.
Well, it's not only illogical, but if you go and analyze the data in a different way, it does not support that conclusion. So you really don't. I mean, I think the fact that it's quote unquote research doesn't mean a lot until you look at the individual study. And what these sorts of analyses or reports don't do that. They do not look at the statistical process. They don't look at the data collection. They don't look at the premise. And that's one of the problems. I mean, if you look or read what Dr. Abrams from UC San Francisco has said about his applications to NIDA, FDA, and DEA to get permission to do the studies that he ultimately was able to do, they looked at the protocol and they said, well, you may show a benefit here. We can't have that, basically. And he had to rewrite his protocols so that he would get the permission and the funding to do the study. So we assume somehow that because research has been done, quote unquote research, that it's objective and reports the facts. That's often not the case.
Well, and by the same token, I don't want to dismiss that just because I don't think it's probably true and it doesn't follow my belief system. I mean, I'm willing to get more information about this study that they just to find out. It doesn't ring true with anything that we know or we've experienced. But I'm not willing to throw that away completely.
Right, and forgive me for saying it this way, but belief doesn't enter into this. Shouldn't.
Right,
It has to be something
that
that we can look at objectively. And
that's right.
and be willing, and this is one of the, I guess it's a criticism that isn't just on critics of cannabis as a medical alternative or a medical option, but on a lot of other things. I mean, if something that's a good study flies in the face of our preconceptions or our beliefs or what we would like to see, you can't simply say, well, I don't really believe it, and toss it out. Because, and that's one of the criticisms I have of so much of the work that has been done under the auspices of NIDA, where there is a very clear bias. And this is not just my interpretation. Shirley Simpson said precisely the same thing in that New York Times interview published on January 19, 2010, where she said, not a direct quote again, I have to actually look this up to get the exact words, but she basically said that because it's the National Institute on Drug Abuse, they generally do not fund studies that might show benefit to marijuana. In point of fact, they do not fund studies that might show benefit, and they will only fund studies that will or are intended to show a negative. And you can go look at this just by looking at the protocols and see that they reject protocols which are objective and will not fund those, and do fund studies which are intended and are expressly worded or reworded so they get funding to show a negative impact. So that's an institutional bias, and it is not appropriate in science.
I agree. Well, as always, Alan Shackelford, you have been enlightening, educational, and just fun to be around. We appreciate it as always.
It's my pleasure entirely, and right back at you.
Thank you.
You are the man.
He is the man. We have run to the end of our hour, and a couple quick things. I want to remind people that tomorrow is September 11th, the 11th anniversary of the attacks on the Twin Towers and the Pentagon. There have been a lot of people who have been interested in conspiracy theories, what really happened and how these really happened, and whatever you believe about that, whether you believe that this was some sort of an inside job, the fact of the matter is that thousands of people died in an awful, terrible, horrible way for no reason whatsoever. I would ask that tomorrow you recognize that we are stronger when we stand together than when we stand alone. So please thank a police officer, thank a fireman, appreciate the person standing next to you, because we can never forget the awful, awful thing that happened 11 years ago.
And let me add military.
Yes, thank you.
People
of course.
in our armed forces obeying the orders, whether we agree necessarily with what they've been ordered to do or
Absolutely.
not. Vietnam was a whole different deal, and we have to actually appreciate their collective and individual sacrifices.
I absolutely agree.
Thank you for our freedom.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. And this week, we have another exciting week on iCannabis Radio. Tuesday, of course, from 6:30 to 8, American Weed Realm Radio with the Stanley Brothers. After that, our friend Jenny Cush with Sex Pot Radio from 8 to 10. Wednesday, Dan and the boys from IDAB Radio from 7 to 9. Thursday, Stickman with Overgrow the Radio. He's actually going to have Josh Stanley on, and Dr. Melamede will be on as well. Next week on Monday night, we are going to have Steve Elliott from Toke of the Town talk about Washington's 502. In case you're not aware, Steve Elliott is not a proponent of 502, and you'll hear why. And as well as Greg Dower's Cannabis History Lesson. Thank our sponsors, Mile High Wellness, Noto Urban Garden Supply, Edson Maton and Mats, Medical Marijuana of the Rockies, Medical Marijuana 101, Run on Grass, and my doggy friend Diesel. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.